facilitator. And if you aren't new here, welcome back. I'm so glad that you're tuning in to today's episode. So, for today's episode, we have our next guest speaker, and I'm so excited to dive into the topic of sleep and so many other things. But I will introduce her now. So, we are going to be speaking with Jessica Fink. LSCWS is a Texas based therapist who specializes in sleep issues, PTSD, OCD, chronic pain, and maladaptive overcontrol. As a CBT oriented provider, Jessica uses structured, data driven approaches combined with flexibility and creativity to create real, lasting change. Jessica values client independence, designing therapy to equip individuals with their own tools and coping strategies. Jessica's practice is entirely online and accessible to all Texas residents. Amazing. So if you are in Texas, definitely can work with Jessica, which is exciting. So Jessica, thank you so much for just coming on the podcast today, talking to us about sleep and all the other things. I'm excited to dive in. But yeah, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe just how you're doing today, and how you
Yeah,
got into this field of work?
sure. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Let's see. I have started calling myself a therapist for anxious rule followers with a death grip on life, and we'll talk about how it kind of like threads through all of my specialties. Definitely applies to sleep. A lot of like we'll talk about how a lot of people that are struggling to sleep are actually trying too hard, and that's a lot of the problem. But I didn't really set out to be a sleep specialist initially. I've been a social worker for 17 years. Can I do math? 2007. So 18 years. Maybe it's 18. Anyways, 2007 is when I got started in the field. Been in mental health the whole time. But again, didn't really start out as a sleep person. I worked as just kind of like general adult mental health at a psychiatric hospital in Austin, Texas. Did that for many, many years. And then 2021 is when I started my private practice. And I got a flyer in the mail advertising this training for something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. I'd always seen people with sleep issues because if you work with people who are depressed, who are anxious, who have trauma, et cetera, so a lot of them have sleep issues. And I always just thought that it's medical and you need to go see a doctor and you need medication. And I knew there was like some, sleep hygiene stuff we could do, but I didn't think there was much I could do to really treat insomnia. So I went and checked out the training and I was like, wow, it was a good training. I was like, this is really cool. So I just started kind of putting it out to the community like, hey, I treat insomnia, I treat other sleep issues, and it's become like the bulk of my practice. It's not all that I do, but it's like 60%, I'd say, of my practice is people with sleep issues. And CBTI is magical. It is like a few sessions, you make a few changes. They're simple, they're not easy, but it like you see things turn around very quickly. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. And so I've just kind of dug into that more, learning more about sleep and expanding to work with other sleep disorders. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up and how I ended up here.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, it's funny how that happens. You start with one thing and then you follow the flyer and do the thing and get interested in
Hmm.
it and then,
Hmm.
when it clicks, it clicks. And I also have
Yes.
my background in social work, so that's funny.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so when people are coming to you with challenges sleeping, like what are you seeing? Like how is it affecting their well-being when they're like coming to you and they're like, I need help, I want to do some CBTI.
So people who are, I like to make the distinction between how good sleepers think about sleep and how people with insomnia think about sleep. Good sleepers don't think about sleep. People with insomnia, they think about it all the time. So it is consuming their day. It is they think about it all the time. They are constantly worried about it. They are working so hard to get sleep. And a lot of people with insomnia are, if they're married or if they're in a romantic relationship, their partner is often a good sleeper themselves. And so their frame of reference is this person who falls asleep easily, has no problem. So there's a lot of like resenting their spouse. There's a lot of it just consumes their day. And then the other struggle is that people just, they know they're not operating at 100%. They know they're not functioning the way they want to be functioning. They're having trouble concentrating, they're forgetting stuff, they're worried they're going to mess something up, and then as bedtime creeps closer, they start to get more and more and more anxious, which then of course gets in the way of sleeping. And then they're not sleeping, so now they're anxious because they're not sleeping, which makes them more anxious, which makes them not sleep, and so on and so on and so on. So it really does, like, if you're not sleeping, it can consume your life. It can consume your whole day. It's all you think about. And you're not doing it, but it is all you think about.
Yeah, I love that distinction that you make because it is so true. If you, yeah, like if you are a good sleeper, you don't think about it, but if you're
Yeah.
not, you're going to be so consumed by it. And I mean, I really think you're just like nailing it right on the head. And what would be like the difference between maybe someone that is just like super tired or fatigued, or someone that's like, I haven't slept, I like have insomnia, or like what is that difference? Or they kind of like overlap,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, like at what point, like I think that like it's a good question. Like at what point do we call it insomnia? At what point is it a problem? Because everybody has bad nights. Even very good sleepers, they have bad nights. They're gonna have a bad night here, bad night there. That's normal. It's normal if you're going through a stressful time in your life that maybe that's gonna disrupt your sleep. That's pretty normal. But there are actually parameters for when we call it insomnia. And so insomnia is difficulty initiating or maintaining sleep. It could be either or it could be both. We tend to use 30 minutes as the cutoff. That's not in like the diagnostic criteria, but most of us in the sleep field will say 30 minutes. If it's taken you longer than 30 minutes to fall asleep, if you're spending more than 30 minutes awake over the course of the night, if you're waking up too early by more than 30 minutes, that's when we start calling it insomnia. And then also, we're looking for it to be at least 3 nights a week for at least 3 months. So that's when it's become chronic, it's become its own problem. And then the rest of it is that the person is either really stressed out about it, they're really worried, they're really frustrated, like kind of like earlier I said, it's consuming all of their thoughts and then all of their day, or again, they just feel like they're not functioning as well as they'd like to during the day because of the insomnia. So it's kind of like all of those things added up together. That's when we start calling it insomnia. And it becomes its own problem. So people will have trouble sleeping because they're going through a stressful event or a life transition or even a positive one, like getting married, having a baby, getting a promotion, like even something like that can disrupt your sleep. But at some point, like there are some people that the stressor resolves and they go back to normal sleep and everything's okay. And then there are other people that the stressor resolves, but the sleep problem lingers. And now they're just, it used to be, I'm not sleeping because I'm stressed out. And then now it's like, I'm just not sleeping. And the fact that I'm not sleeping, that's become the stressor. And so that's how we kind of distinguish between just, trouble sleeping, which everyone has from time to time, an actual like clinical insomnia disorder. And I'll talk a little bit about just like fatigue. There's a difference between being tired and being sleepy. And sleepy means high likelihood that you're going to fall asleep. Sleepy is like your eyelids are heavy, your head is nodding forward, like you're literally about to fall asleep. Tired is a little different. Tired, like tired, fatigued, dragon. You can be tired without being sleepy. And so, fatigue, sometimes people will think, oh, I'm fatigued. I must not be getting enough sleep. There must be a problem with their sleep. And it's possible. But there's also like 1,001 other reasons that somebody might be fatigued. And so people with insomnia will tend to be like, I'm fatigued. This is a problem. I'm not getting enough sleep. I have to fix it. And we actually will talk about here's all the other, you could be dehydrated. You could be getting sick. You could be, there's like 1,000, you could be bored. There's like a million different reasons that somebody might be fatigued that don't have anything to do with their sleep.
Yeah, everything that you shared makes so much sense, and it's so helpful as well. And like I can't even speak from, I'm just thinking right now, I have an early flight tomorrow. It's like an 8 a.m. flight,
Mhm.
so I have to schedule my Uber, I don't know, maybe like 5:30 or something.
Yep.
I know
Yep.
that I am not going to sleep well tonight because
Yeah.
I'm going to be so nervous about oversleeping
Yeah.
my alarm. Just because it's like an early
Right.
flight. And so the
Yep.
distinction is just really helpful. And
Yep.
maybe we'll get into some tools and stuff that people can use in a
Mhm.
little bit. But I'm curious, is there like a sweet spot for like how much sleep people are supposed to get? Is it unique for
Mhm.
everybody? Do you kind of figure out as you go? Everyone has, you see on like social media, like 7 to 9 hours. Is that
Yeah.
true? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yes. So we all have a sleep need. We don't all have an 8 hour sleep need. So if you could like plot it on like a bell curve of how much sleep people need, the fattest part of it is going to be 7 to 9 hours. Like most likely your sleep need is somewhere between 7 to 9. There's a few that's less than 7. There's a few that's more than 9. That's not that many people. Um, and it really just, it's like, it's kind of vague. It's like the amount of sleep that allows your body to feel good. Where I see that cause problems for people is people will get super rigid on 8 hours. They're like, it has to be 8 hours. They may not be an 8 hour sleeper. They might be a 7 hour sleeper, a seven and a half hour sleeper. And sleep is homeostatic. So if you oversleep your need, it's kind of the way that I had it explained to me is it's kind of like you have to pay it back to the bank. It's like overdrawing your account. So if you are a 7 hour sleeper and you sleep for 8 hours, you may notice the next night that you don't sleep as well because you slept too much and your body's sort of like recalibrating because you oversleep, you overdrew your account, and now you
You're
have
making
to
me
like
laugh because
pay it
that
back to the
literally
bank.
was me. That literally
Yeah.
was me last
Yeah.
weekend. You're making me laugh.
Yeah.
I'm like, that literally
Yeah.
happened to me. I had
Yeah.
like the longest sleep, the what I thought was like the best sleep. And
Yeah.
then,
Yep.
I slept in, let's just say 9 hours. And then the following
Hmm.
night, I was
Hmm.
like, I don't think I had like spent enough of my energy. So I was like
Hmm.
kind of like wired. I was like, I'm ready to go. And it's like,
Yep.
I don't think I fell asleep until like 3:30 or something. Um, but keep going. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to cut you
Yep.
off, but you're
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
speaking
You
to me
might have
right
over.
now.
Yeah. You might. No. You might have overslept your need, and we know that not getting enough sleep is a problem, but it's also a problem to oversleep. It's like it's like when you eat too much food and then you're like uncomfortably full and you're like, I never want to see food ever again, I never want to think about food, and like that
Right.
feeling passes, but it's kind of the same idea. And so I spend a lot of time telling people, you might not be an 8 hour sleeper because somehow people have gotten it in their heads that everybody needs 8 hours, and that's not, you probably need somewhere between 7 to 9. But it kind of takes some doing just to notice like what allows you to feel good during the day and consistently, so where you're not getting that ping pong where it's like too much and not enough, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So really, yeah, like tuning into what you need, finding what that range might be,
Mhm.
and that makes a lot of sense. If you sleep longer, that the next day you're gonna have more energy, might not have the
Yep.
best night's sleep. Um,
Yes.
if someone were to be having like a restless night, so maybe
Mhm.
they're struggling to either fall asleep or they're waking up in the middle of the night a bunch. What do you think might be some tips or tools that they could use to fall asleep or fall back to sleep?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the most important thing is to not panic. Um, sometimes people will start panicking. And that is only going to make it worse. The other, really, a lot of the work that I do with people is like trying to give up the effort. So trying not to get into this cycle of, because as soon as you realize you're not sleeping and then you start trying really hard to sleep, you're not never going to fall asleep. Like, to fall asleep, you have to disengage. You have to like kind of float away and drift away, and we got to like take energy out of the system, so to speak. And so as soon as you start paying attention to anything, um, you're not going to fall asleep. And so the most that's like the first thing I tell people is try not to panic. Um, Everybody has bad nights. Bad nights are normal. There's a lot of kind of work that I'll do around, people will catastrophize about the next day. People are like, I'm going to crash my car because I didn't get enough sleep. I'm going to screw up something really important at work. I'm going to, some other really catastrophic thing. And so trying to reframe that, like one of the questions I'll ask people is when you're laying in bed and you're thinking, okay, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm going to I'm going to crash my car because I didn't get enough sleep and I'm going to fall asleep at the wheel. I'll say, how likely does it feel? You're laying in bed, it's 3 a.m, you can't fall asleep. How likely? They're like, oh, it feels, I don't know, 50% likely. Okay, cool. So then we'll actually do this thing where we calculate how long they've had insomnia, like how many nights, and then how many times they think they've driven their car, and come up with this like percentage. And I don't know, let's just say they've driven their car 900 times over the course of having insomnia. So then I'll say, okay, so tell me about the 450 car accidents that you've gotten into, because it's 50%. And they're like, well, I haven't gotten into that many. I'm like, yeah, because when you're trying to fall asleep at nighttime, humans are like, we are stupider at night. Like we think that the frontal cortex, like the executive function parts of the brain, are mostly offline at night. And so when it's nighttime, you've got your instincts, you've got your emotions, you don't really have a lot of logic. So all those horrible consequences feel so true and they feel so realistic. And really what's going on is that you don't have your whole brain. You don't have that part of your brain that swoops in and is like, okay, what's the actual likelihood of this? Like what's actually going on here? So kind of like this perspective shift. And then another thing that people can do, another like suggestion that's given is, and people have maybe heard this, is to, if it's not working, if you're not falling asleep, get out of bed, just get out of bed, go do something else, and don't go back to bed until you feel sleepy. What you're doing there is you're giving up the effort, because once you start getting into this cycle of sleep effort, like it's off the rails, like it's not going to work. Sleep does not reward effort. So you give up the effort, you get out of bed, you go somewhere else, and you do basically whatever you want. We used to say, do something boring. Like people have maybe heard, oh, do something boring, do something that's not too stimulating. We've started to shift, at least I've started to shift my guidance on that, because I think if you're really fixated on, I have to do just the right thing or it's going to wake me up, now you're so anxious about picking the right thing to do, and that's messing you up. And again, what we're trying to do is like take the anxiety out of the system. So I'll say, do whatever you want, do whatever you want, do something fun. Don't worry about if it's going to wake you up. Don't go back to bed until you feel sleepy. And and until you feel sleepy, don't go back to bed too soon. Sometimes we are sacrificing a night here, a night there. If you sleep crappy tonight, it's more likely that you're going to sleep better the next night, because sleep is homeostatic. So if you go without it, your body's going to sort of start to crave it more. And so that's another just kind of like or tactile is not the right, like tactical thing that people can do, is to get out of bed, go do something else. Don't go back to bed until you feel sleepy. People will start being worried about, well, if I don't get enough sleep, something bad is going to happen. So we can actually kind of walk through, what are you worried about? It helps to ask people how many times they've had a bad night's sleep, but they still did okay the next day, or to ask people if they've ever had a good night's sleep and still had a crappy day anyway. So trying to decouple this idea that, oh, if I sleep bad, my day is going to be bad, but if I sleep good, my day is going to be good. Well, it's not like a perfect one to one. So it's kind of both. It's kind of trying to really tackle that anxiety and that making mistakes really high, and then giving up the effort and letting sleep come find you when it's ready.
Yeah, I really love that. It feels like when there's so much resistance around something, like there's so much tension around something, it's like that inner like fight. It's so quiet,
Mhm.
but it's what's happening. And so by releasing that effort, you're letting like the tension dissolve, and then
Yes.
everything can just fall into place.
Right. Right.
And
Yes.
that feels really nice.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
Would you say that, and I don't know if this works with like the effort part, but would you say that there's anything, maybe like diet wise or day wise or kind of like do's and don'ts of like the first thing that comes to mind for me is like having caffeine too late in the day, like things
Mhm.
like that that
Sure.
maybe would be helpful or harmful for sleep?
Sure. So kind of thinking about like good sleep hygiene, I think is kind of what you're maybe kind of what you're getting at. And I think of sleep hygiene kind of like brushing and flossing your teeth. So it's like good to do it. Everybody should be doing it. It's good preventive care. I will say if you have like chronic insomnia, sleep hygiene alone is not likely to fix it. Like this somebody with chronic insomnia is going to need more like CBT for insomnia. They're going to need more than sleep hygiene. But sleep hygiene is a piece of CBT-I. And so it's really about this idea of how to make your daytime habits and your bedroom environment as conducive to sleep as possible. So things like exercising during the day, particularly late afternoon, early evening, if you're able to swing that. Caffeine, what I tell people about caffeine, it's different from person to person, but on for the average adult, caffeine has a half-life of 4 to 5 hours. So however much caffeine you ingest, 4 to 5 hours later, you've still got half the amount. And so I'll tell people just kind of keep that in mind when you're trying to time how late should I have caffeine. Caffeine in the morning is most likely fine. So somewhere like, I don't know, 6 to 10 hours of bedtime. Um, Nicotine is horrible for sleep. Like, people will say that smoking calms them down, and it does insofar as it's like it's stopping withdrawal, but um, nicotine's horrible for sleep. As far as eating, if you have dinner early, if there's like a long gap of time between the time you eat dinner and the time you go to bed, then eating a light snack before bedtime, something like crackers, bread, cereal, and fruit is usually like one of those. Trying to avoid anything that's really sweet before bedtime, just because this thing can happen where your blood sugar like shoots up and then it drops, and it's that blood sugar drop that can disrupt your sleep. Honestly, one of the best things I think anybody can do is to try to get out of bed at the same time every day. Within an hour. I mean, it doesn't have to be to the minute, but within about an hour, try not to vary your wake time by more than an hour. And that's good for people with insomnia, people without insomnia, like anybody. That's a thing that shows up on sleep hygiene lists a lot. And that's probably the most impactful out of everything, is just that regularity in the time that you're getting out of bed within an hour. Let me think if there's anything. I'm trying to just like go through the list in my memory of sleep hygiene. Oh, trying to make your bedroom as dark and cool and quiet as it can be. Have a comfortable bed, all that kind of stuff. All of that is helpful. None of it's going to be helpful if you're still bringing in like tons of sleep effort. So you could have like the most perfect mattress in the world, but if you're still trying really hard to sleep, it's not going to work. So that's never going to be the thing that fixes it, but it's all really good stuff to do. And I would say like probably the most impactful thing that people can do is getting out of bed at a consistent time every day.
Yeah, I love all of those tips, all so helpful. And this one about getting out of bed at a consistent time is one I actually
Hmm.
haven't heard before. And, I
Ah,
really like routine. I really
hmm
like habits and consistency. That's something that
hmm
just like my system responds to so well. I don't know if it's from being like an
yeah.
athlete and just having like so much routine growing up,
hmm
but I really thrive when I have structure. And so
Yes.
that feels like really good to me. If I don't have any, knock on wood, I don't have any like sleep issues right now, but if I did,
Right.
I would be
Right.
using that one for sure
Yes. Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
seems
Because what
really
it
helpful.
does is it sets so your circadian rhythm is the thing that determines the timing of when you're asleep and when you're awake. And it's this like roughly 24-hour biological rhythm. All humans, really all living things, have a circadian rhythm, and it determines like when you're asleep and when you're awake. So if the time you're getting out of bed is highly erratic, it's kind of the same as if you were like traveling across multiple time zones every single day. Because the time you get out of bed determines kind of how the rest of your day goes. It determines your light exposure, your meals, your social interaction, like all the other things you do during the day tend to be related to the time you're getting out of bed. And so if that's inconsistent, it's kind of like your brain does not know what time it. We call it social jet lag. It's like your brain doesn't know what time it is, and it's like constantly trying to adjust and then adjust, and then it never really lands anywhere. And so then people will get where it's like super unpredictable. They're like, I don't know what time I'm going to fall asleep. I don't know what time I'm going to wake up. I don't know if I'm going to sleep, if I'm not going to sleep, because their brain is like super confused as to what time it is. And so getting out of bed at the same time every day teaches your brain what time it is. And if your brain knows what time it is, then it knows if you need to be alert or asleep. Yeah, so that's what's going on with that.
Yeah, I really relate to that feeling. I think that I've experienced it before where maybe I've like slept in later unexpectedly
Hmm.
or, whatever the case might be. And sometimes if that happens to me, I wake up feeling groggy. And I think that's
Yes.
like I wake up feeling more tired. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so it's like not the most fun spot to be in sometimes.
Right.
Um, this might be like a little bit repetitive, but if not,
Okay.
no, great.
Okay.
Um, would you say that there's anything in particular in terms of like a morning routine or an evening routine,
Hmm.
or that might be like helpful? Like the first thing that
Hmm.
comes to mind is like a cup of tea, like having warm tea or something
Hmm.
like that. Or, I like to work out first thing in the morning. You mentioned movement like throughout the day. Um,
Yes.
so anything that comes to mind with like morning or evening routines?
Yeah. So as far as I'll start with the evening routines, I think it's a good idea for everybody to have a like buffer zone or wind down period. So like 30 to 60 minutes between like 30 to 60 minutes before you think you want to try to go to bed. Have a time where you're like kind of stopping the activity of the day and you're like transitioning, you're like easing off the day, easing onto the night. um, Falling asleep really should be this kind of slow, gradual, like 10 to 30 minutes is what's considered normal for how long it should take someone to fall asleep. Humans really are not supposed to just like drop, slam into sleep and fall asleep in 2 minutes. And like if you fall asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong, but it could be but people who fall asleep very quickly a lot of the time are people who have like untreated sleep apnea or some other kind of sleep disorder, or they're drunk, or like falling asleep super fast isn't always the best. It's not always the best thing. So it should be this kind of slow, gentle, kind of easing off the day, easing onto the night. Whatever you do, I think, whatever you want to do during that time is mostly fine. Screens are not they're not a factor, but I don't I don't know that they're as big of a factor. Again, like if you're hyper focused on the screens and you get all the screens out of your life, but you're still doing tons of sleep effort, it's not going to matter. Morning routine, just getting out of bed, like getting out of bed at the same time and trying to get light exposure as soon as you wake up. Sunlight is really best. But depending on what time you're waking up, you may not have sunlight, but trying to get some light exposure after you wake up, I think really helps just like start the day and kind of set like let your brain know it's morning, it's time to be awake. So that's kind of my recommendation around like evening routines and what to do in the morning.
Yeah, that's all really helpful. That makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, and one major takeaway that I'm receiving and like a common theme that I think you've been referring to is around that sense of like effort and like not trying to
Yeah.
kind of, you know, put this intention in like a chokehold of some sort and like
Right.
really listening to your body, like listening to what you need, trying to be gentle with yourself. Would you say that most people, this is where they're getting stuck around the effort? Is that where what you would
Yes.
see, or do you see them getting like stuck in other places, or is that mainly what you're seeing?
For sure with insomnia, like I would say kind of the top two culprits. One is sleep effort. The other is spending too much time in bed, which I can talk about here in a second. But we could probably rename insomnia sleep effort syndrome, and it would still be an accurate an accurate description because people get it like at some point they start to notice, uh-oh, I'm not sleeping. Oh no, this is a problem. Oh no, oh no, oh no, I gotta fix it. And then they start doing sleep effort. And sleep effort can be meditation, can be sleep effort, breathing can be sleep effort. Like any tool in the toolbox can become sleep effort if you're applying it with way too much pressure. It's just like if you try too hard to relax, relaxation doesn't seem to come. It's more like, okay, I'm just going to let it come find me when it's ready. And we just kind of have this easy manner, this lightness. And that tends to work a lot better than like aggressively pursuing it. So, yeah, sleep effort, I think, is a huge culprit. And then the other culprit, the other big thing that I see in insomnia is people will start spending more and more and more time in bed because they're trying to get more sleep. And so they figure if I spend more time in bed, surely I'll get more sleep. And it's kind of like if you were to go, I don't know, I'm not sure why anybody would do this, but if you wanted bigger feet, and so you went and bought big shoes, thinking that your feet would grow to like fill the space. Like, again, I don't know why anybody would do that, but it's like that. Like you spending more time in bed is not going to get you more sleep. But people will start doing this thing where they go to bed earlier or they linger in bed later. Or if they wake up in the middle of the night, they just lay there trying like hell to sleep. And it makes sense to be like, oh, I need sleep. Let me be in bed to get sleep. But excessive time in bed relative to how much you're sleeping is one of the things that can undercut your sleep drive, which is the again that thing that determines how much sleep you get and what the quality of that sleep is. So in my opinion, those are really the top two. It's not the screens, it's not the caffeine. It's that you're spending too much time in bed and you are trying way too hard to sleep.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Really helpful, really insightful. I've learned so much from our conversation. I do have two more questions. Is there anything else that I haven't asked before I ask those two questions that I haven't asked it that you want to share? Do you feel like we covered everything?
Let me think. I think we hit a lot of the main I guess one other just little piece of advice that I'll give is, which kind of related to what we've already talked about, is don't get into bed until you feel ready to fall asleep. Try not to get into bed until you feel sleepy, which may or may not be the time you want to go to bed. Try not to base it so much on the time, but on how ready you feel to fall asleep. So that's one other, just the only other thing that I would add that I think would be useful for people. But yeah, other than that,
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. It's funny that you mentioned that because the other night when I had this like bad night of sleep, the next night I was like, I'm not going to bed until I feel sleepy. So it's so funny
Mhm.
that you mentioned that. So I
Yep.
stayed up like a little bit later than I normally would so that I could feel
Mhm.
like the sleepiness. That
Right.
way I wouldn't get like frustrated when I went to bed. And it
Right.
worked. I was like, whew,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So this was a great conversation. I mean, I learned so much. I would love to share with the listeners like how they can stay connected with you. I
Yeah.
know you have a newsletter, you have YouTube, like where
Mhm.
where are you in the universe?
Yeah, so I have a small YouTube channel for my therapy practice. I post. I've got a lot of content on there about sleep. I've also got stuff on there about my other four specialties. I have a monthly newsletter, and I kind of rotate the topics between my different specialties. I'm also on LinkedIn and Pinterest randomly. I've started like just putting
Very
together
cool.
little like content on those related to sleep and to my other specialties. Yeah, so let's see. LinkedIn, Pinterest. My website is just jessicafinktherapy.com. I have a blog that's got, again, lots of stuff about sleep as well as some stuff about my other specialties. If you're located in Texas, there's tells you how to contact me about working with me. But even if you're not located in Texas, my hope is that the blog and the YouTube channel and some of the other stuff still have useful information for people.
Yeah, they seem like great resources. Definitely check them out. And the last question, this is something that I ask every guest speaker, is what is one thing that is really lighting you up right now? So this could be anything. This could be a book, a person, a class you recently took, a show that you're watching. It could just be something that you're like really loving, really enjoying that's, yeah, lighting you up.
Yeah, so I just started reading this really interesting book. So a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, back in October, my husband and I went to Amsterdam, and one of the places that we went when we were in Amsterdam was the Van Gogh Museum, which is one of my favorite things from everything we did on the trip. It was really interesting, and so I was like, okay, I want to know more about this man because he's interesting. And so I found this book. It's called Vincent's Women. I just started reading it, but it's kind of it's his life story, but told from the perspective of the women in his life. So it's like narrated mostly by his sister-in-law, but it also talks like his mother and like the women he had like romantic interactions with. And so it's, I mean, it's fiction. It's fiction, but it's based on real. Like the author did a bunch of research and read a bunch of letters, and like it's based on real stuff. But it's based on like these conversations. Like the whole idea is like his sister-in-law is telling the story of his life to her son. Um, so it's I guess, quote unquote fiction as far as that goes, but it's like fiction based on real, based on real stuff, if that makes any sense. So
That
yeah,
does.
I
That
was like,
sounds
oh,
really
what an
interesting.
interesting idea. So yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Um, did you, I've never been to Amsterdam. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy your trip?
Yeah, yeah, we really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
Yeah, I'll have to add it to my list. Yeah, so thank you again, Jessica, so much for being on the
Mhm.
podcast. This was a lovely conversation, and yeah, thank you for being here.
All right, yeah, thanks for having me.